All right. How's it going, guys? Let me put the link in the chat for you. We're going to be doing our live stream now. Come on, I'm answering any questions about Mary, the Mother of God, in the chat for you. Hello, Gangster Ghost. Okay. Link is officially pinned. Click on that link to come and join. And here's one other thing I will do. Hey! Feel free to join. Link is pinned. Feel free to click on that link or leave a comment below. I'm going to do one more thing. How you doing, Maddie? Okay, we're testing out our new system, as you can see. Feel free to join. Ask me anything about Mary, the Mother of God. Okay, go. So this is an Ask Me Anything About Mary, the Mother of God. We're going to be doing these kinds of streams a little bit more regularly now. These types of streams where I'm going to try and do some just some Ask Me Anythings about any sort of topic that's out there. Not necessarily just an Aquinas classroom. Um, but yeah, that's essentially going to be the what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and do it every month. Um, yes, Maddie. This is a bonus stream. I'm going to try to do every month. I'm going to. Oh, hey, gangster, how's it going?
Hi.
Good to see you.
Hi.
How have you been?
All right. How are you?
Good, 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 good. Do you have a question about Mary, the Mother of God?
Oh, I have. I talked to Azel the other day. I told him what Jay Dyer said that the same word they use for until for Jesus, for Mary having a kid, is the same word they have for Jesus said until the end of the world. He said
Yes,
that same word can mean different things in different places. What would you say?
yes. Yes, so in regards to the perpetual virginity of Mary, that is essentially the argument that is being made in regards to, arguments pertaining Matthew chapter 1. Of course, people use Matthew chapter 1 as, where it says Mary knew not man until. Uh, hey, how's it going, Maddie? Good to see
Hey,
you.
we're just saying hi, brother.
Good to see you. How are you?
Yeah, we're good, thanks.
Good,
Hi.
good, good, good.
Cybertruck.
Oh, Cybertruck, very nice. Yeah, I just
Hey.
thought I'd say hello, man.
Oh, thanks for popping in. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I'll hang out on the stream, but I'll probably duck out of this.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Thanks for saying hi.
All right, brother. God bless.
God bless. Okay, yeah. So, gangster, just to respond. So, yeah. So we do. So yeah. So in Matthew chapter 1, obviously the argument is in Matthew chapter 1. It says, she knew Joseph not until they married. But as many people have pointed out in many instances, the word until has a double meaning in Greek that merely means before a certain event happens. So you're right. It does say until the end of time. Christ says, I will be with you until the end of time, which is merely to say, before the end of time, I won't abandon you. Now, reading the context of Matthew chapter 1, in my opinion, it is very clear that St. Matthew is appealing to the Jews who were skeptical about the incarnation and skeptical about the virgin birth. And they were trying to say, oh, maybe St. Joseph was Christ's biological father. And he's really nailing as hard as he can that no, um, he wasn't. And so when he says he knew, they didn't come together until, he's merely saying this is an event that didn't occur before their marriage. To try and hammer that point home to Jews that were skeptical about the fact that Mary was a virgin when she conceived Christ.
Oh. And Bruce said the other day that how could she be his mother where he's beyond her or something? That's what Bruce said. What would you say?
Oh, you're talking about like the title Mother of God, how
Yeah.
Mary can achieve that title Mother of God if she is, if God created her and she didn't create God. Is that what kind of the argument that he's making?
Yeah. Bruce
Yeah,
said that.
I have heard that argument from people in the past. Oh, how could Mary be God's mother? Blah 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 blah. The simple reason is, in St. Thomas's theology, there is what is known as the communication of idioms, which is basically the idea that when it comes to the incarnation, there are certain things about Christ's human nature or divine nature that can be said about his human nature because every part of his divine nature is possessed in his human nature, but not everything in Christ's human nature is communicated to his divine nature, and therefore it would be wrong to attribute things that are exclusive to Christ's divine nature to human nature to his divine nature, but not his divine nature to his human nature. So if you were to say, for example, God died on the cross or God died, that's not incorrect to say because Christ's divinity was fully present when Christ died. But if you were to say something like, Jesus in his human nature is omnipotent, well, that's erroneous. Jesus Christ is omnipotent, but not in his human nature, only in his divine nature. Um, so, because of that, you can attribute certain parts of Christ's divinity to his humanity, but not vice versa. And you do have to quantify, the distinction when you do say things like that. But when it comes to Mary as the mother of God, we can say that Mary is the mother of God, even though God created Mary, in the sense that the human man, Jesus Christ, there was nothing in his divine nature was lacking in the man Jesus Christ. Therefore, it is not erroneous to say that she's the mother of God in the sense that the baby she birthed ultimately possessed the fullness of the divine nature within him. And I think part of the argument that the Council of Ephesus tried to make as to why Nestorius was wrong for saying that Mary was not the mother of God was because under Nestorius's model, Mary basically just gave birth to a nature. But you can't give birth to a nature, right? If your mother gives birth to you, she doesn't just give birth to qualities about you, she gives birth to you fully. So it doesn't make sense to say that Jesus Christ, only his humanity, only the sack of flesh that belonged to Jesus Christ was birthed to by Mary. That would, imply that Christ's humanity was only partially present when Mary gave birth to him. So that's why it's dangerous to say she is not the mother of God, and also why we say that she is the mother of God. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Another thing. I heard people try to say she might have been 13 gave when she gave birth to Jesus or something, or
Uh,
young.
yeah, that is generally what a lot of people think is historically she was probably either 13 or 14.
Because I heard, I think Wildheart says, I think it might have been younger. He said, or something. What would you say?
Well, I know there are people who think that that's controversial because they think it's like, oh, how could she consent to this if she was so young? There's really just a simple reason for this. And the simple reason is merely that, um, God does not give a person a mission if he doesn't give them the sufficient grace to complete that mission. And so, in regards to Mary, the mother of God, when God put forth this task before Mary, he gave her the sufficient grace to be able to consent uh, to that mission, whilst also knowing the extent of what that mission is. And so, because it's in God's capability to make a man aware of the weight of a mission that he's about to give that person. God also was able to, by his divine power, make it so that Mary was well equipped to freely accept the mission that he was setting before her.
Oh, oh, yeah. I did remember hearing like back in the ancient days in the Middle East, kids, uh, when they hit 13, they automatically considered an adult back in the day.
Well, that I'm not too sure about. I know that that at the time, marriages were much younger. I mean, if you've ever seen the show The Borgias, there were people who were betrothed at very, very young ages, which today we would say that's like crazy. Why would you betroth a person for marriage at that age? Um, Unfortunately, that was the political extent of the time. But in regards to Mary, the argument that atheists will often make is, oh, that's messed up that Mary would be impregnated at the age of 13 or 14. Well, no, it's not really messed up because God has the divine power to ultimately so prepare a person by way of grace for the mission he entails for them. And so, as it pertains um, as it
Yeah.
pertains Mary, Mary was able to, as it pertains Mary, um, God, by his grace, was able to so prepare her for the mission he entailed for her, which is why she was fully prepared and fully cognizant of what she was being asked when she made her fiat or proclaimed her Magnificat.
Well, yeah, I heard this argument get like tacking up. It was from Wildheart. He's saying it was bad or something.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
I hear that argument all the time, but again, for the reasons, I brought up, it really doesn't make a lot of sense.
yeah, it, uh, it was normal back then, but they tried to compare it to Mohammed, but
Right,
Mohammed married.
right. They try to say that it's like, oh, it's pedophilia or it's messed up. But here's the difference. Because of God's divine power, God can allot grace to a person in a manner where he can prepare them for any mission. And so it's in God's divine power um, to prepare even someone at that young age to fully consent to that mission. So when it comes to Mary, some people might say, well, Mary could not have been prepared to, consent to be the mother of God. Well, it is true that most women at that age could not do that. But Mary was different because God's grace is sufficient to assist them in whatever task he gives them. And therefore, his grace was sufficient in making Mary able to understand the mission God was asking for her and to ultimately consent to that mission.
Yeah, Mohammed married a girl even too young for back then. She was 7 and got with her when she was 9. That
Yeah,
was young for back then.
I get what you're saying.
So is it the same as marriage? It was normal back then. But yeah, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would just go back to what I had said earlier that the reason why it makes sense is ultimately because God, is able to, by his grace, well equipped a person for whatever mission he allots for them. So while Mary by her own natural power may not have been well equipped to consent to such a task at that age, God's grace ultimately made her well equipped and well informed to consent to that mission at her age.
Yeah, yeah. Some people say she was fully grown, like Dave. What's the name? Michael
Yeah,
Jones.
yeah, we don't know for sure. It's possible she was 13. Now, I didn't know Michael Jones made that argument. It was my understanding that Michael Jones made the argument that she was a perpetual virgin, and the reason she was a perpetual virgin was because Saint Joseph was older than her. But again, I'm not 100% sure about that.
Yeah, he was arguing against Muslims, I guess.
Yeah, I know Muslims try to, make that argument, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter either way because it doesn't make a lot of the argument doesn't make a lot of sense either way.
Yeah, and in the Quran they says that Mary is part of the Trinity.
Yeah,
The Quran. Yeah, is that
I
crazy?
don't see any argument for that.
Yeah, it's I guess the way Islam is attacked Christianity by lying about them and stuff.
Huh?
Islam is the way they're the mock Christianity by lying like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. But yeah, I haven't done uh for Saint Joseph. Is he and you ever Mary? If she's a saint, what is she like a patron saint or something?
Well, Mary is certainly, I mean, she's certainly given a level of honor that supersedes all the other saints because of the degree of excellence that she possesses as the mother of God.
Oh. I mean, like, is Joseph is he a saint of carpet, carpentry?
Well, Saint Joseph is certainly a saint in the church, and he certainly has a high degree of honor within the church.
Because yeah, I heard there's all kind like saints of stuff. Is there they're just saints or just a saint of something? Like I heard patron saint of carpentry or saint patron saint of wars or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think his intercession is efficacious. Well, I mean, first of all, he's the patron saint of fatherhood and masculinity, first and foremost. Um, I mean, that's kind of the first big thing. But outside of that, Saint Joseph is also I mean, his intercession is also efficacious in in protecting the church as well. In the same manner that he protected Christ on earth in the desert. I mean, one of the things that is taught by Saint Thomas is um, those who those who are given a mission on earth ultimately have that mission perfected in heaven. And so, it was Saint Joseph's mission to protect Christ in Egypt and in the desert when King Herod wanted Christ dead. Um, and that was his mission then, and now that he's in heaven, that mission has been perfected even more greatly.
Oh, yeah. Uh, well, I have another question. What about uh? I heard this before. Is this true? I heard it from Achilles. But I also heard other people say it's not true. That the Catholic Church has a telescope named Lucifer.
Catholic Church has what?
A telescope named Lucifer.
Uh, let me. I remember looking up that story a while back. And I think I was on with Achilles. Now I can't remember exactly, but I believe what the truth behind that was, and don't quote me if I'm wrong. The truth behind that was there was a some group which had gotten uh, funding from the Vatican to do some telescope research, and I think they named the telescope Lucifer, but it wasn't. Um, it wasn't like the Vatican told them to do that. I think that was what the story was.
Because I heard some people say it was a different telescope named that, and they named theirs different.
Let me look it up right now.
Oh, oh, do you see
Oh, so it
Mary
looks
have an?
like it actually isn't true. It looks like that was largely an urban legend.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
kind of,
because Answers in Genesis is very anti-Catholic,
yeah,
and Answers in Genesis even admits that that story isn't true, even though they're very known to be very anti-Catholic.
yeah. Ken Hammer, he's always been a ham, but
Yeah, he is.
yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with you there, sir.
Another thing, uh, do you think you said that those other people could have been? I heard this before. The other kids, like James and Jude, could have been his half brothers from Joseph's first marriage.
Sorry.
I always heard they said that James and Jude could have been kids from Joseph's first marriage.
Yeah, that's an argument that is made. However, I don't agree with that argument. I generally hold, and I know there are some EOs that hold that Saint Joseph was not a perpetual virgin, and that he had that he had children with another woman from a first marriage. I don't tend to side with that argument. I think Saint Jerome makes a very good argument against that, which is that ultimately the pure origins of Christ had to be reflected in the household that he was raised in. And so, because of that, it was necessary that his entire household, the entire household that Christ was raised in, be virgin in nature to reflect the fact that Christ came from a pure and divine origin, or that he had pure and divine origins. And I generally agree with that. To connect that with a lot of St. Thomas's theology, one of the things St. Thomas teaches about the conjugal act is, he says that the point of marriage when it comes to children is not just pump babies out for the world. It's ultimately the raising of children and the educating of children, all this different type of stuff. But that but what he basically says is, by doing that, a person becomes kind of a partaker, or kind of becomes a partaker in God's divine life, or a participant in God's divine life, because that person is kind of working with God in a sense, to bring a person up and ultimately, raise them up and bring them into antiquity, and kind of raise them with Christ. Sorry. But I would say because of that, because the household of Mary and Joseph was to act in that manner, to ultimately, according to the conjugal act, bring up Christ into the world. Because of that, it was necessary that the household that Christ was being raised in reflect his divine origins, and reflect the purity of his divinity. And because of that, I think it was important theologically that both Mary and Joseph be virgins. In my opinion, I know that not all Catholics agree with that, but that's the view I take. I do see a comment here from MMTADON4241, and he says, "Which age are you talking about? You misspoke, my friend. Bible does didn't tell us the age of our Blessed Mother. That is bad theology." Okay, so I'm not making an official. I'm not making an official statement as to when or how old Mary was. I'm just saying, based on the biblical um, evidence that we have, and the historical evidence we have, I think it's most probable to believe that she was probably 13 or 14 years old. I'm not saying that that's a definitive fact. I'm not saying that that is dogmatic. I'm not saying that this is officially said in the scriptures. I'm just saying we don't get an answer either way, but the answer that we have from history seems to suggest that she was probably about that age, and it's probably accurate to say that she was about that age at the time of the Annunciation.
Oh, I want to. Is Mary where they got the word Merry Christmas?
No, not really. I mean, the word Mary just means happy and joyful. MME or MERRY just means happy or joyful, which is different um from Mary Mary. I think St. Thomas actually does write about what the word Mary means in his in the Summa Theologica. Or well, he wrote a commentary on the Annunciation, and he does comment a little bit about what that means there and what the meaning officially was there.
And was there another lady besides her, Mary Magnum, named Mary in the Bible? The New
Yes, there
Testament.
are many Marys in the Bible. There's Mary Clopas, Saint Mary of Clopas, and then there's also Saint Mary Magdalene, as you mentioned. Um, Essentially, and that is one of the arguments in favor of the perpetual virginity of Mary. One of the arguments in favor of the perpetual virginity is ultimately that the children that we see, like Jude and all the other people, James and all those other siblings or supposed siblings that are referenced in the Bible, are said to be the children of Saint Mary of Clopas, who is mentioned as the sister of Saint Joseph. So she was the sister-in-law of Mary. She was the aunt of Christ, and those children belong to her. That's generally the traditional teaching of the church throughout history, and that's one of the arguments that's commonly made. And you're right, there is another Mary, Saint Mary Magdalene, and that Mary is different. from the other Marys that we read about. She had no, physical relation to Christ. She wasn't a family member of Christ like Mary, the Mother of God, was, or Saint Mary of Clopas was. But she was someone that spent a lot of time with the apostles and spent a lot of time around Christ.
Oh, well, what else? Oh, I have a question. What does the Catholic Church say about Nephilim?
About what?
Nephilim?
Nevilleans?
Nephilim. I heard in the old they said in the Old Testament, angels mixed with humans to create Nephilim.
I'd have to look into that. I don't believe the Catholic Church has an official position on the Nephilim. Let me see. Oh, you're talking about like the giants.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe Saint Thomas holds to the argument on the Nephilim that the Nephilim were very large men, very large muscular men. And that's generally how he interprets those verses where you see the Nephilim.
Yeah. I I also. What do you think of the other thing? The what is it called? They wrap Jesus' body in.
Oh yes, the tomb, yes, the crypt.
Uh, I heard they have it now, and it
Christ's
have
body? No, they don't have Christ's body now.
not his body. The Shout of Turn.
Oh yes, that is something people do talk about. Shroud of Turin? Yes.
Uh,
Which is, yeah, that goes back to ancient tradition, which says that Saint Veronica wiped his face, and then the mark from his face still remained afterwards.
uh, uh, what does the Catholic Church say? The Shout of Turn is true.
The Catholic Church does typically accept the Shroud of Turin. However, because it is private revelation, no person is bound to accept it. So it's not like, other doctrines where people are bound to accept it, or they require the assent of faith. That's not the case with the Shroud of Turin. However, it has generally been accepted by the church throughout history.
Because is it true? I heard that it was first from the Orthodox, then the Catholic Church had it. Is that true?
That I'm not too sure about. I'd have to do some more research into that.
Uh, uh, what does Catholic Church think of movies like The Nun?
Movies like The Nun, well, the Catholic Church doesn't take an official position on that. I mean, I would say personally that some of those movies are a bit sacrilege. I'm not saying you can't watch them. I mean, you can, although I would say if they cause you to sin or you fear they may cause you to sin, then I would advise against watching them.
I mean,
Uh, but
I did. They have demon disguised as a nun. Do you think that's sacrilege?
they have demon skies as what?
As a nun, like
That
what do you
might be
think?
a little bit sacrilege. Yeah, that might be a little bit sacrilege. Again, I'm not saying you can't watch it, but make sure you're in a good state of mind before you watch it.
Well, and one other thing was uh nuns inspired by like idea the nun came from Mary.
No, the nuns. Well, you do see a prototype to the nuns in the Bible, where you have what are known as the widows. Saint Paul writes about the widows, and those were essentially an early group of monastic women that vowed virginity. But they became known as the nuns.
Oh, oh, you ever seen that TV show, The Flying Nun?
The what?
The Flying Nun?
The Mind Hunt?
The Flying Nun. I mean, with
Oh
what's
yeah.
yeah.
Yes, I have seen The Flying Nun.
Do you think what would you do if you saw a real life flying nun?
Well, that would I think my jaw would drop to the ground if I saw a real life flying nun.
Yeah, crazy. And yeah. Other thing is yeah, the what would you say some would say about the priest? Why they use the name priest? Or what would you say?
What specifically about the priest?
Like why they call their preacher guys priests?
Oh well, they've always been called priests. Um, uh, they've always been called or they've always been priests from the beginning. I mean, if you read the scriptures very clearly, Christ says, when he says, when he gives out the Great Commission, and he says, go and teach all that I have commanded you. Um, you know, that is him essentially granting the faculties of his office to his apostles. And again, we know from the book of Hebrews that Christ's faculties were the faculties of the priesthood. So that means that he's giving the faculties of the priesthood, he's passing those on to his disciples. And we also know in other places, um, he says things like, he says things like, or like St. Paul saying, we are ambassadors to Christ, or Christ is working through us. Right there, he's essentially saying that, that Christ has passed on the priesthood to them. Um, and when you read other verses, like Christ saying, "Do this in remembrance of me," obviously, do this is referring to the repeat of the office, of the faculties of his priesthood. So right there, that all implies that the faculties of Christ's roles were passed down to the apostles. And we see that in the book of Acts too, when they're healing people and receiving confession for their sins. That's more evidence of the apostles performing the faculties of the roles that Christ had. But when we see that there, in those verses, um, that's more evidence of that's more evidence of them actually performing the roles that Christ passed down to them. But we know the roles that Christ had all pertained to his priesthood. It says that in the letter to the Hebrews. So that tells us that those to whom he passed down the office and roles of his ministry to were indeed priests. And we see that in the church fathers, Tertullian, Saint Cyprian of Carthage, Saint Irenaeus, all explicitly call ministers of the church priests. And so they were always priests, even if they weren't called priests. It was always understood that they had the faculties of the priesthood, which is why it's not wrong to call them priests.
I also have a question. Do you believe in evolution? Or I heard normally I remember hearing that most Catholics do, but I heard from other people that they don't. What would you say?
No, I do not believe in evolution. Now, what many Catholics do believe, which I do believe as well, is that apes and humans do share the same DNA. I don't think there's any dispute about that. Um, that I don't have any problem with. The problem is the idea that we share apes as a common ancestor. You know, one of the things that St. Thomas Aquinas says about the soul is that the soul is ultimately the form of a person, and the soul is a composite of the body. So it's distinct from the body, but it's still composite to the body. So the idea is your soul is ultimately the is ultimately the means to your end, which is ultimately unification with God. And your body is essentially an object or a tool that gets you to that end, that kind of works in synchronicity in a hylomorphic manner to your body. And so when it comes to uh, evolution, or when it comes to apes versus humans, apes and other animals like cats and dogs have what we call a sensitive soul, which is the idea that um, their soul, they have a soul just like we humans do, but their soul inclines them to a different end or a different type of nature. The nature of their soul is ultimately to hunt and kill and to survive. Um, where our nature as humans is ultimately charity and higher participation in God. Um, uh, and a plant has what we know as a vegetative soul, which is ultimately to grow and expand and beget fruit. That's ultimately the end of a vegetative soul. But in regards to a human soul, if humans were conceived as apes, as many people claim that they were, then that would mean that their soul, that would mean that human beings were conceived with a sensitive soul. But the problem is we know human beings have rational souls, and the soul can't change because it's immaterial. And we know that each soul is compository to a body. It's intrinsically and divinely linked to a body. Given that apes don't naturally have um, a rational soul, and we humans do have a rational soul, that would make evolution impossible. Now, some people will say that because we have the same DNA as apes, that basically makes it, uh, you know, a surefire thing that we evolved from apes. Not necessarily. We know in nature that there are animals that don't even have the same blood type, but still derive and possess the same qualities as other species. Like, for example, sharks and whales possess many of the same qualities and fall under many of the same genuses as one another, and yet sharks and whales don't even fall under the same uh, they don't even fall under the same species. They may fall under the same genus as one another, but they don't fall under the same species as one another. And so I don't think I agree that human beings and apes definitely share some qualities with one another. But I don't think in any way that proves that humans evolved from apes, or that or that we share a common ancestor with apes. Rather, I think the better explanation is the explanation that Father Matthias Joseph Sheben came up with, which is that God, being a wise builder, oftentimes used certain parts to create other things in nature, and one of the things he created in nature was, you know, man. And the same parts that he used to create man were the same parts that he used to create, uh, you know, uh, the same parts that he used to create um, uh, the same parts that he used to create apes and other animals and other species as well.
Uh, oh.
It's funny you mentioned the Flying Nun, because I know in episode 1 of the Flying Nun they mentioned Saint Irenaeus, which I thought was funny.
Uh,
What were you
Another
saying?
thing is, uh, yeah, uh, another thing is, uh,
What were you saying?
you say you're Eastern Catholic.
Yes, I
What's the
am Eastern. I am Eastern Catholic.
difference between that and Roman Catholic?
Okay, yeah. So the difference between there really isn't much of a difference. They're both under Rome, and they're both Roman Catholic in that sense, in the sense that they have that same Roman Petrine authority. But an Eastern Catholic is called as much in as much as he
Uh,
partakes in one of the 23
either.
Eastern rites.
Well, you say you're Eastern Catholic.
Yes, I
Oh, what is
am.
the difference between that and Roman
Well, yeah,
Catholic?
again, a Roman Catholic, they're both Roman Catholic in a sense, but an Eastern Catholic partakes in one of the 23 Eastern rites. I think he's breaking up there a little bit.
You there?
Yep, can you hear me? Hello? I think you're going in and out there, gangster.
Are you there?
Yep, can you hear me? Hello?
I'm saying, uh, you say you're Eastern Catholic. What's the difference between that and uh,
Well, I see, first of all, that Maddie is here. Good to see you here, Maddie.
Roman Catholic?
Hey, yeah, I might. I thought I might be able to interject some technical knowledge here, depending.
Yeah. Yeah, but I was just saying they're both technically Roman Catholic in the sense that they're under Roman authority, but the difference between a Latin Catholic and an Eastern Catholic would be an Eastern Catholic is one who is connected to one of the, I think, 23 Eastern rites recognized by Rome.
Yes, it would be. Well, it wouldn't be the necessarily the right. There aren't as many as rights as there are. They use the phrase "sui juris," which is Latin for self-governing
Yeah,
churches.
right.
Right, because some of the, like the Ruthenians and the Ukrainians use the same rite, for example. Yeah, that have their own discipline, essentially, and canon law.
Right.
Not right now.
Can I say I agree with my dad?
Yeah, does that answer your question, Gangster Ghost? I think he's having some connection issues there. We can't hear him.
My dad, how to just
I think you lost them.
Oh, darn it. Well, hopefully he'll come back in a second, or hopefully we'll get some more people joining. But how are you doing, Maddie?
Yeah, very good. I'm very good. Just relaxing over the weekend here.
Good,
You
good,
know.
good, good. Good 3-day weekend.
Yeah, 4-day for us, but yeah, the ladies had yesterday off.
Oh,
So
wonderful. Wonderful,
yeah,
wonderful news.
yep, yeah, it's a beautiful thing. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm glad it's 3-day weekend or a 3-day for me.
Yeah, I would ask what you do, but I'll ask you another time offline.
Yeah.
So yeah,
The live stream, yeah. That makes
yeah.
sense. Yeah.
So yeah, no, I'm glad I caught you. I caught you like I was telling you at one point. I'll see your premieres, and then they end up being 3 minutes because I'm like,
Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
and then oh, they went away. So
Yeah,
yeah,
usually what I do is I do like Friday nights at 9 p.m. I do a live stream and
Advisor?
then I'll like clip it and then I'll do it as a premiere.
Yeah,
So
with
then when you
advisor?
watch the
Okay.
3 minutes, it's like 3-minute clip of the live stream itself.
nice,
Yeah.
nice.
Is the hair good? Is Twirly Queenie?
Went to confession today at that other parish I saw you at a while ago.
Oh yeah, Saint Ed. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's my that's my confession place.
Okay, nice. I go
Well,
there every now and then, but
well, the other parish you and I have in common, it's 8:30 on a Saturday, so that's
oh yeah,
hard.
yeah, that's true.
That's a little tough to do.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
that one is a little. I didn't even know they did that 8:30 on a Saturday.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Father is pretty good. Like if you call him, in fact, I've called him and said, "Hey, can I come down?" He's come up to my house, which is
Oh
awesome.
wow, that is good.
Yeah, but obviously, he's got a family and everything because we're Eastern and awesome. So it's like I'm not going to always be like dragging him away from his family and stuff. But yeah. So that's
I made a mistake.
other than that, did we lose? We lost your other guy.
Yeah, we lost Gangster Ghost.
Is he one of your regulars?
Yeah, I've been on his show a little bit, and he's been on my show a little bit.
Okay, well that's cool.
Yeah, he does. Well, he does live streams every now and then with a variety of different people on different streams.
He's not Catholic.
He's either Catholic or EO. Not too sure. He's one of the two.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I know that he
Okay.
gets a Baptist guy on and he gets like an SDA guy on. He gets a
You
bunch of
must
different
put your
people
eyes.
on.
I don't know what an SDA guy is.
Or Seventh Day Adventist.
Oh, all right. Okay. Yep. Gotcha.
Yeah, there's a Seventh Day Adventist who traffics our channel quite a bit.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. And he's
Dad,
on the
that's
Gangster Ghost channel every now and then, and there's a Baptist guy who comes on Gangster's channel as well. Who the Baptist guy is not really too crazy about Catholicism.
Oh, you don't say.
Yeah,
Most Baptist guys aren't. Yeah.
yeah,
Dad, did that beat you?
Interesting.
yeah.
No, I'm gonna keep that one.
The yeah.
Got a guy.
Sorry, my daughter and all. The yeah, no, it's that's interesting. Yeah, I'm so it's funny. I've been in the Eastern Church so long. I'm so checked out on what the Protestants and everything
Yeah.
have going on. Like which is interesting. Like your topic about Mary and whatnot. It's I'm trying to circle back now. I'm finding a reason to circle back. As a good guest should. I can't even. I couldn't even tell you. Because my own polemical training is more counter orthodox. That after having gone Eastern Catholic in literally 2002 or 3, you know what I mean? It's more than half my life. I don't even when Protestants have various objections, they're another It's like another universe to me. I don't even know what you're talking about. I mean, I could go on, at length about, Barlam and Michael Cerularius during the Great Schism, but what does your average Baptist in 2026 think about anything? I have no idea
They're
whatsoever.
separatists. I mean, they're people who are just kind of like, I'm reading this for the first time outside of any previous antecedential, any previous antecedent, and that's what's going to inspire my theology. If you say, well, hey, I don't think you should read the text like that because no person, ever made that nobody ever made that argument before. They'll be like, the traditions of men, traditions of men, traditions of men. And it's like, I think by traditions of men, you just mean proper context. I think that's what you mean. Um, you know, um, but most high church Protestants are not like that. Most high sect, like Lutherans and Anglicans, will try to say, no, actually, tradition supports our point. But then, Baptists will just be like, well, yeah, I can say baptism doesn't regenerate. Never mind the fact that, literally nobody taught this before, um, uh, before like the 1700s. Like nobody before Charles Spurgeon really made that argument. But because they were just they were just traditions of men, so they're invalid.
Yeah, that's interesting. I one of the, and I won't get into the precision of it, but a political streamer that I'm quite fond of, who is Southern Baptist. He says that he is Southern Baptist for the most Catholic reason possible because his fathers and grandfathers were, which I think is, it's kind of an interesting. It's almost a half admission in some sense,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's. But again, I don't really, and it's a cute line if you're a streamer too. I'll admit that. But yeah, no, I don't really. Yeah, they're a world apart. They're a world apart from me. That's all I can. That's all I can really say about that. So yeah.
They're hard to take seriously.
Well, it's weak tea. I mean, from our perspective, it's weak tea. At least from mine, right? It's like I can engage with an Eastern Orthodox because an Eastern Orthodox is going to have. Well, first of all, we're going to have a preponderance of opinions in common with each other, right? 95, 90%. But then also, there's reference to history and church fathers and these sort of things. So because I said so just doesn't play,
Right.
or because some guy said so 200 years ago. 200 years ago? What's 200 years ago? 200 years ago is a week,
Right.
I don't know. That's the best I got to help you out here, brother. I don't know.
Yeah. I hear you.
So
yeah, so I'm planning to do like one of these live streams every month where it's like just like an ask me anything about a specific subject. I didn't marry this month because typically in the Catholic Church May is like the month of Mary. Next month I
makes
might do
sense.
one on the incarnation since next month is supposed to be the Sacred Heart of Jesus. I usually do one based on a specific month, unless there isn't like a topic for that specific month.
Oh, I don't know where you're getting your reach from, but if you could get your reach into the Orthodox communities, I'm sure you'd get a lot of stream-worthy pushback from Orthodox on the Sacred Heart.
Oh yeah, I'm sure of it. Well, we have EOs. There's an individual who's an EO that comes on our channel a lot.
Where you're getting, but if you, oh, okay, yeah. If you can, tell him to get his friends angry so they can come on and produce some good content there.
Well, we argue about the Filioque all the time.
Which is the silliest of all things. I mean, even Timothy Ware, Archbishop Callistos, right? I mean, even he has said, "Hey, this is, the Filioque." Yeah, that's
silliness.
It really is. Yeah, I mean, it's of all their complaints. I mean, in my opinion, they have some interesting complaints, but the Filioque is really not one of them.
Yeah. I mean, that was I mean, but that's one that we talk about, and I know the one guy we have one guy, Sandman. He comes on all the time, and he's EO. I think he's actually Russian Orthodox. And so he says, like he speaks like this, and he says, I think that, the Filioque ultimately, it takes away the monarchy of the father. It takes away the father's, the father as the only cause or the only person in the Trinity that is not preceded by another person. And my argument is always, well, no, if you read the Thomistic understanding of the Trinity and the Thomistic understanding of the Filioque, St. Thomas clearly makes a distinction there. He clearly says that, the Son is the Word. The Son being Word is the perfect self-expression of the Father's knowledge. So basically, he says that in all intellect, there is a self-subsisting expression that is derived from that self-subsisting knowledge. For example, if I said to you the word America, and you started to think of like the American flag or red, white, and blue or hot dogs and hamburgers, those concepts you would draw are ultimately based on your self-subsisting understanding that is derived from the fact that you know what America is. And so St. Thomas would say that because all knowledge is possessed in God, and specifically all knowledge is possessed in the Father, everything that is known by the Father and acted upon by the Father is communicated to the Son, with the exception of the Father's paternity. That's what separates Trinitarians from modalists.
Right.
Is the fact that the Father is the Father and the Son is the Son. It's relational opposition. But because of that, the ability to spirate is also given to the Son, but it's only in a passive manner. So because the Father is the only one that's actively, causing the Spirit to happen, or is ultimately causing the spiration of the Spirit, but because of the Father's self-expression of knowledge, the Son is also spirating the Spirit, but the Son is not actively spirating the Spirit in the same manner that the Father is. He's only doing it in the sense that the Father's that the Father's spiration is communicated to the Son in a passive manner. I know Cardinal Bessarion at the Council of Florence, he walked in there.
Yes, I was about to say this. Yeah, go, please.
He's like, we're not going back to Rome. And then he read that argument from St. Thomas Aquinas, and he's like, oh, maybe he got it right after all.
Yes, and then didn't was it Florence or Lyon where a significant group of the Greek representatives agreed to understanding it in Greek, versus the Latin as proceeds from the Father through the Son, and they found that acceptable?
Oh Oh yeah, I mean there was a document which almost everyone in the Eastern Orthodox Church agreed to at the Council of Florence, um, which has there was a document that was overwhelmingly agreed to by the Eastern Orthodox bishops there. Um, that has that was really only objected to by Mark of Ephesus, which basically agreed to all these major Catholic doctrines like the Filioque Way, papal supremacy, purgatory. And it wasn't until Mark of Ephesus came in and said, well, oh, actually, we shouldn't agree with that. And then they changed their mind. But every bishop had agreed to it. So it's like every single bishop in the Eastern Orthodox Church at that time admitted Rome was right about these doctrines. And it was only getting on the bandwagon with this guy that took them away from that. But I mean, I just find it very funny because oftentimes EOs will try to like based on their argumentation, they'll try to find like the most small bits of evidence, like to try and debunk Catholicism or try to show contradictions in Catholicism. But that's like a major gaping hole in Eastern Orthodoxy that I don't know how you get around. And they just kind of like try to make excuses around it because it's like, well, they must have been right, obviously. And it's sad because if Mark of Ephesus had not done that, Constantinople probably would not have been sacked by the Turks 14 years later because they would have been under the protection of Rome. So it would have been like, hey guys, the Turks are trying to attack us. Oh, well, they're one of our churches. We better send our guys over there to stop the Turks. But because they weren't under Rome's protection, it was like, oh no, what do we do?
Wow, I have a lot to say there, but I'll prune the branches. Yeah, a lot of what the Orthodox bishops or the Greek, I'll say the Greek bishops, they had agreed to in things at different councils, and I'm forgetting now. It's been a while for me if it was Lyon or Florence. The laity at that point simply wouldn't accept, and I almost wonder sometimes if the Mark of Ephesus intervention is overplayed historically for the lack of reception that they knew that they would have back home.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting thing. Besides that too, have you ever read Bonaventure's collations on the Hexameron, his thoughts on the first 6 days of creation?
I have not.
Yeah, now this is speaking directly to what you were talking about with the fall of Constantinople, and he draws out, and this has been a significant influence on my thinking. He draws out the parallels about the recapitulation of sacred history and how in the Old Testament recapitulates and the New recapitulates and everything that's happened since then, right? Or we might even just say simply the Old Covenant recapitulates in the New Covenant, and you can draw significant parallels between the 12 tribes of Israel and what happened to them and the what we might call the 12 spiritual tribes of the New Covenant, right? The 12 apostles and the ritual churches that they founded. And how if the Greeks would simply leave off from their obstinacy, they would be re-added to the body of, using what I'll call, Neo-Benedictine terms now, or maybe Neo-Joanna Pauline terms, be grafted back into the main body of the church, that they would be spared from all these abuses of the Turk, right? Because you can look at, Rome, to give you the nutshell, Rome was like Judah, right? Founded by Peter, but also Paul, who was a Benjaminite. And if you recall, the kingdom of Judah, the only two tribes besides the Levites, right? Because the Levites were scattered throughout. the two tribes that made up the kingdom of Judah after the split were Judah and Benjamin. And then Rome, the two apostles that went there, even though Peter was a Naphthalite, by blood, he's the new prince in that sense. And then Paul was a Benjaminite. And then, it details all these things, and it even talks about how it's fascinating because if you extrapolate it out, and you look at the history and you read like Judges and Kings and Chronicles and such about how, when the kingdom, the most of the 10 tribes are carried off, but then there's like this little remnant, like of Simeon and these sort of things that kind of like make their way as refugees back to the kingdom of Judah. And you can almost look at the Eastern Catholic churches like that.
Right.
And then it goes much, much deeper than that. I highly recommend the book. It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. And he drew it out. Well, 500 years ago? I forget now exactly when Bonaventure lived, but
yeah, he lived at the same time St. Thomas Aquinas did. I mean, they were known to be like rivals.
Oh, right. Yeah, right. Yeah, because Bonaventure was a Franciscan and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, he was coming from that kind of proto-Scotistic school of thought. But they were friends. They weren't like enemies. They weren't like, you're a heretic.
Right. And Bonaventure's work on Old Testament analysis is just absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
It's absolutely worth the read because he draws out, and yeah, again, it is in that more statistic vein, but it draws out fascinating. I mean, just these recapitulations of history. I'll put it that way, which is useful for us in the current day because it helps us to parse our situation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really rejoin the Catholic Church and life will work out for you.
Well, right. That is true.
Yeah, no, I can't recommend it highly enough. Yeah.
That has been proven to be the case throughout all of history.
Yeah, you'll take your beatings, and the beatings, in some ways, the beatings might be worse, but you'll be more likely to survive them. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could even apply this to geopolitics, which is outside the scope of your stream, and although more in my specialty, but yeah, it's the same thing. It's absolutely the same thing. Yeah.
Right. Well, now a lot of EOs are attacking divine simplicity, and I'm like, oh my goodness.
This goes back to John Maimonides, right? Or does it go back to the Paris school? I forget now.
Well, yeah. I mean, basically, you have people like Jay Dyer now that are trying to say, well, God is not absolutely simple, because he's trying to essentially he's trying to say that the essence energies distinction, or how he views the essence energies distinction, can be justified without divine simplicity, which first of all, I mean, I don't think Gregory Palamas, when he introduced the notion of the essence energies distinction, I don't think the idea was I don't think he understood the essence energies distinction in the way that a lot of EOs do today, where a lot of EOs would say, well, the energies are really God himself, distinct from God's divine essence, as opposed to and like they'll try to bring up some of the Cappadocian fathers when they use the word energia. But the thing that they miss is that the word energia in Greek basically just means to work, or to work through, or to work by, or to work in. A lot of translators translated the word energia as operations, because the idea was that was basically what the Greek definition implied. And so if you read St. Thomas will make the distinction where he says, yes, God is absolutely simple, and there's no distinction between who he is and what he is. The essence existence distinction, there's no distinction between the two. But he'll say that the work of God, or the operations of God, or the work of God in the world is how we come to know God, right? That's negative theology. And he says that that's kind of how that's how he defines operations and energies, and that's how he says a person comes to participate in God. Whereas the EOs will say, well, clearly they are God, but they're not a part of his essence, and clearly they're uncreated completely, because if they weren't, then how are we going to be able to participate in God in any way? That would just be like Mormonism, where we become like gods. And again, I think St. Thomas's model very clearly addresses why, that's not necessary. He basically makes the argument that or St. Thomas basically makes the argument that the essence, or he basically says that the virtues of faith, hope, and charity that are infused into the soul of a person who is justified by grace are essentially qualities of God that are created, but the grace itself is not created in the sense that it's basically just God's will existing eternally. But faith, hope, and charity are qualities that are created to incline a person to God. They're basically habits of the mind that are placed into a person or planted into a person by God. And that's kind of where St. Thomas comes from on that subject. But I think reading some of the older Eastern fathers, it seems far more like that's the definition they're going with. Like, for example, if you read St. John Damascene, when he writes on the exposition of the Orthodox faith, when he writes about the idea of energies, he explicitly identifies them as the works or operations of God. Like, he takes from St. Paul's writings in Romans 1, where St. Paul says, oh, the visible world are known by his works, and he takes that to mean that the energies are defined as God's, as God's imprint or God's operations, as opposed to being God without being a part of his essence.
Yeah. Now you are more recently studied on this than I am. What I can add a couple of things and echo some things that you said. The one of the things that really comes to mind is there are exceptional out there, and I first got this off the old school BizCath forum, in the 2000s, the 00s. There's an explication of this that completely, there are multiple out there that completely harmonize Thomistic or even traditional Catholic understanding, whether Franciscan or anything else, with Palamas, right? And every time I read it, because it's inordinately complicated, not inordinately, perhaps it's simply beyond my personal gifts, but I read it and I'm like, wow, that makes complete sense. And then in 10 minutes, I could not explain it to anybody, to be completely frank. But one of the things that comes to mind was, from all this textual analysis, which I've occasionally, dig back into over the last almost 25 years, is that Palamas was not a scholastic by any sense of the means. He was a spiritual writer, and he was not writing in the same sense that even, say, the Damascene was. Yeah.
Right.
He wasn't writing with the technical precision of terms, right? So I'm not saying, for example, that, he was, now the name is slipping me, but that, the English abbess that everybody loves occasionally, I forget her name, but, he wasn't, that's not what he was attempting to accomplish. And only in hindsight, after the political controversy, was he held up to be writing that specifically. And I think hermeneutically, that's a very important point, because already, how are you, how are you holding a guy that did not write systematic theology? How are you taking him now, and attempting to deconstruct systematic theology? It just simply doesn't hold, right? It's like, for example, I don't know if you've ever read any Origen, who, obviously a lot of his, there's a lot of, right. There's a lot of woo woo in there, but at the same time, there are pearls of wisdom in there, and you can't, you have to just look at them for what they are, which I'm not saying that Palamas is woo woo. I'm simply taking an extreme example to illustrate the point that, even if you take the early fathers, if you take, who off the top of my head, yeah, I can't think of anybody. I'm even thinking, like, if you take Richard of St. Victor, right? Who's later, who's beautiful. If you've ever read him, he's beautiful, his work. But you need to have some context and understand, what the author was trying to accomplish and what he wasn't.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Yeah, and it doesn't seem to me like he, like Palamas was like challenging absolute divine simplicity. I think, I think the manner in which his work is read today is under a completely different light, given kind of the modern sort of basis for Eastern Orthodox theology.
Oh yeah, what I read of Palamas is not polemical.
Yeah.
Right. It's and I'm almost misapplying this term if you're listening to me from a Latin context, but it's almost manualistic. It's guiding, right? It's attempting to explain something. It's not right. Yeah. It doesn't. That's not what he's doing. He's doing an.
Oh no. Oh dear. That was by accident. Oh dear, let me get back there. That was by accident. I apologize. Let me get back here. Okay, sorry about that. Let me make sure it's the same link. Hold on one moment. Whoops. Yeah, I accidentally did that. Here, I'm gonna rejoin in a second. Yeah. Okay, there we go. There you are. I see you twice. There we go. Yeah. But yeah. Let me make sure. Let me make sure I have this on my stream. I might have to go. Yeah, hold on. Let me try this real quick. Here. Still hear me? I am here. Can you hear me? I can hear you. Okay, let me try this. Okay, now there's two of me. Now it should be one. Give it a second. Okay. I don't know why there's another one of me there. Oh, there we go. I think, or not. Here we go. Let me kick that guy out. There we go. There we go. Okay, there we go. All right, we're back. All right, yeah, the window got closed out there. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, yeah. So you were going on about Palamas. Go ahead.
Oh my gosh, sorry.
No, you're good.
It's gone.
Oh,
It's evaporated.
yeah.
But that's okay. Yeah, it's I mean, because even in our parish, right, we in our ritual church, we commemorate Pelamis.
Right.
Yep. I mean, we even commemorate
Photius.
you
Yeah.
know, Photius. Yeah, we commemorate Photius, who died in communion with.
Right. Oh, I think you're cutting out a little bit. Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
Oh, apparently my phone can't go to screensaver or I'll have to keep an eye on that. Right, which I mean, which is such a profound reproach, I would think, to the Orthodox that Photius, uh, you know, he. I'm forgetting the word now, but he, he came back and he came, he would write that, okay, maybe there's some exceptions or whatnot, right? If you read his later writings, but at the end of the day, he came back to agreeing with Rome. He said, this is what it is. And, maybe I was still right around the edges or whatever else, because I'm the greatest scholar, in the Greek language. And how can you possibly, but which I have no problem, for which reason I have no problem commemorating a saint like Photius, because he literally resolved his problem with the Holy See. Even if he had a little pride later, if the Greeks put him on the calendar and we inherit that from them through the Slavic tradition, fine. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but no, it's like even Photius gave it up, man. It's like, what are you doing? You're better than Photius, the most brilliant Greek scholar of his era? No, I don't think you are.
Well, and on top of that, um, on top of Photius, a lot of EOs I know will try to be like, or was like, oh, well, what I was gonna say was, the schism itself in 1054 had very little to do at the time with the Filioque. That became a bigger deal later on. But at the time, it had more to do. The whether you receive communion via leavened or unleavened bread was a bigger dispute than the Filioque. Does the father proceed? Does the spirit proceed from the father and the son? That was a bigger debate at the time of the 1054 schism than the Filioque was. That only became bigger again later on. I mean, it was started with Photius, but that was obviously pre-schism.
Yeah, so I was like, I went to a hockey game a couple of months with a new friend who's a Latin trad, and we were talking, right? And I described myself as a Greek ally, basically, right? Being, relatively, I can understand as a Latin trad, where he's coming from, and I support his positions. And we were talking about, the Eastern Orthodox and everything else, and he was talking about how he had considered becoming Eastern Orthodox, but they were just disagreeable about everything. And I was like, and he was younger than I am. Yeah, he was, I want to say he's probably about 30. And, and I was like, they've been like that for 1,000 years. Like, you can look up their screeds complaining that Latin priests don't wear beards.
Yeah. It's pretty
I,
odd. Well, it's like they'll say like Saint Francis of Assisi was demonic because or they'll say saints were demonic because they had the stigmata. The stigmata is demonic. Well, why is the stigmata demonic? Well, it's demonic because it was scary. And then meanwhile, like one of the emperors of Byzantium that they commemorate as a saint, like literally was married to a child, and they commemorate him as a saint, and it's like, oh yeah, that's okay, that's acceptable in our tradition, but oh, the stigmata, it's scary, it looks scary, therefore it's sinful and demonic. It's like the picking and choosing. It's like, give me a break.
well, I'm not sure which one you're talking about, but in fairness to them, if she died of age, I suppose at that point it could have been okay. But Which emperor was that?
Let me look up. I can't remember the name. Let me look him up real quick. I think it started with
Yeah,
an
no,
S.
it's just. I mean, it's just a history of contention. Now, I have a lot of fondness for these people at the same time because I have adopted and completely gone native in their spiritual tradition. You know.
Sure. I get that.
Um, Yeah, but no, it is. Yeah, the schismatic mindset is
Oh
a
yeah,
thing to behold.
Stefan Militan. He was the king of Serbia. He's venerated as a saint in the EO Church, and his wife was 5 years old when they got married.
Oh, it's the Serbs. Okay, yeah, the Greeks and the Slavs might not even necessarily recognize it. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah.
But
But
yeah,
it's
no,
like
that's
if you're
interesting.
gonna attack, I'm like, okay, you wanna. I'm not gonna chide the people you venerate, but if you're gonna chide, uh, Rome for recognizing, Saint Francis of Assisi, one of the most pious men in human history, but you're gonna be venerating, a guy who, married a 5-year-old girl, then, I am going to kind of call you out on hypocrisy for that.
Well, I think that their main complaint with Saint Francis of Assisi is that he's A, very effective, combined with B, post schism.
Right. Well, you don't need to
I
venerate him,
ultimately,
but when people attack him viciously and say, oh, he
yeah.
was demon possessed, and it's like, the man literally walked up to a leper and kissed him on the cheek, which, could have been the end of him right there. And he literally went to the Turks, unarmed. But no, he was a demon because scary handprints. But you're gonna venerate people who have more of a sketchy past, then it's like, might be a little bit of hypocrisy here.
Yeah, I mean, and it's weird too because the Orthodox they have this thing they like to bang on Catholics about things about like for example stigmata, the Sacred Heart of Jesus, these sort of things as being too fleshly, and then also on their own liturgical calendar they have the three separate dates for the first, second, and third finding of the precious head of the blessed John the Baptist.
Right,
Right? And you're
exactly.
like, really? Really? You know, that's that's huh, curious in the
Yeah.
modern parlance. Curious. What is that? I don't know. It's yeah, there's no
Yeah,
uh,
it's a little bit well, and they'll do this thing where like they'll attack Catholics for natural theology.
Theology. It's almost
It's almost like
um
the like Stoicism, where the Stoics were like, oh, well, people get drunk and angry and upset, and that's really, 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 really bad. So therefore, you should try to not channel your emotions at all. It's almost like that, but with the intellect, where they're like,
where they're like,
well, people are so rational, so rather than trying to properly use your intellect to discern certain theological truths without falling into rationalism. Instead of doing that, you should just like poo poo using the intellect and just say everything's a mystery.
three.
But then, and they'll attack, Catholics, like they'll be like, oh, you made this argument in favor of the Immaculate Conception. Well, that's too intellectual, and you're using natural theology, and you just got to, your reasoning is invalidated because everything needs to be understood as a mystery. But then when they'll turn around and they'll be like, oh, actually, let me tell you about give you 18 million reasons, theological reasons as to why building a statue is demonic. And if you want to have an image, the only images that are ever not demonic are flat images. Or let me tell you why your church is evil for using instruments inside of churches, or something like that. And it's like, they'll go through this thing where like they'll chide you for creating theological arguments in favor of your point, but then when they try to develop all these weird excuses as to why they can call people demonic for having stigmatas, or statues, or fleshly things, then they start to create this system of theology to try and excuse that.
It is it is a strange thing. It is a strange thing, and I'm speaking as one who is by and large not a fan of instrumentation and liturgy. I think that the Eastern Church has the better side of that argument on the base level, that the only instrument that's made by God is the human voice, right? But when they go beyond that,
I
and
would
they
agree with that.
yeah, but then when they go beyond that.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I see C-Sal in the comments. Nice to see you there, C-Sal. But sorry, I think you cut out there.
Hello?
Yep. Sorry, you had cut out there for a second.
Yeah, so, but beyond that, right? I mean, beyond that, it's obviously not demonic, but I mean, it might be less desirable, or less, to use the Thomistic word, fitting.
Right.
Right, but yeah, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, I
No,
would
it's
agree with
ridiculous.
that. I mean, when it comes to things like statues, I mean, one of the things I like more about the East is how systematic they are with icon veneration, where it's like kind of loosey goosey with the Latins. Like it's like, oh yeah, oh okay, well we'll genuflect to Jesus, and that's kind of it. It's just kind of there every now and then, as opposed to the East, where it's like, well, we have a system of how veneration works, um, which I prefer. But it's like, if you're gonna just go
Me
around and
too. Yeah.
say, oh well, if you have a statue, that's demonic, and then all of a sudden the arguments that Protestants make against them using images, they like start to adopt them just to own the Romanists, then it's like, well, it's a little bit hypocritical.
Well, right, and a lot of that comes from the trauma of iconoclasm. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and because those things, that wasn't happening, circa AD 600. Yeah, no, it's kind of
But they'll almost become like iconoclasts towards Rome, because they'll see the Latins, and again, I prefer flat icons, but they'll try to make the argument that it's sinful to have a statue of a saint, and they'll like look at the Latins, and they'll like start to develop all the iconoclastic arguments that Protestants will use against them. They'll kind of like start to adopt them to try and attack statues and say, like, oh, statues, that's pagan.
right. Yeah, and I all I can say is I completely agree with you. I also prefer um uh abstraction, and now I'm forgetting the technical term from when I wrote the book and whatever else, whether or not it's a bas relief, or an icon, or a fully three-dimensional statue. I prefer that it reflects a spiritual reality and is not trying to be naturalistic, even though, for example, of the Western arts, the Gothic would be my favorite, because it still tries to provide a spiritual reality. It's not perfectly naturalistic. I do think that's more ideal. Even Benedict, I like to, the 16th, as I like to call him, when I'm, writing on Twitter, which is kind of funny to say, His Holiness Benedict the 16th, or His Holiness Pope Emeritus Benedict the 16th. So HHPEBXVI, which is a fun way to say it on Twitter or whatnot. He even said that the three basic styles of Christian art are iconography, Romanesque, or no, Gothic iconography, because Romanesque is really just Gothic or iconography, or no, I'm sorry, it's getting late. Romanesque is really just iconography on a certain level. So iconography, the Gothic, and and Baroque, but then he said Baroque at its best, which he didn't say about iconography or Roman or Gothic. So the Baroque, at its finest moments. And I think there's a very serious point there, about things.
If it ain't
It's
Baroque, don't fix it.
Yeah, more or less, actually. More or less. I do like some Baroque art. Rococo, I'm a little less fond of. One of the parishes that I grew up in was Rococo, which you don't see a lot of in America. You might even call it by American standards very twee. It's a lot of white marble with gold gilding and twisted columns, and cute little cherubs and everything else, and the gold filigree. And I mean, it's very beautiful, but I don't know. It's not very devotional,
Yeah, I like Baroque art. I don't have a problem with Baroque art. I mean, I'm a big fan of the image of Mary where she's holding Christ's body, and they have like the two on the side. They have one where she's holding the baby, and then one when she's holding his body, and they combine the two. I like that image. But but I mean, I think the Byzantine system of art is more consistent and is more systematic. Whereas it's not just like, oh hey, there's an image, or oh hey, it's just a cross, just genuflect. Like there's actually like, a system of, okay, here's how you go through and venerate these images.
Right. I mean, you could even call the West almost, and I'm not the first to allege this. In fact, I'm just reiterating other people. The West is almost semi-iconoclastic. Yeah. They
Yeah.
don't have the same, nobody's kissing anything after Holy Communion like we are, which sadly, even in our parish, after the lockdowns and everything, you don't see as many people kissing the icons, although I still make sure that my family does. But, yeah, no, it's really, it didn't, it didn't penetrate as deeply. Although the problem came from the East, and then the solution was, in terms of iconoclasm, and then the repair was more deeply imbued in the East, right? So it was never the same. It never had that same level of seriousness in the West, like you might say about in the East about the real presence, right? Like like we don't have Eucharistic adoration because the skepticism of the Eucharist came from the West, and then when the solution came, they adopted it more deeply than we did because it was never an issue for us. So it's kind of the same thing with them, with iconoclasm. Make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. So, anything else? Big plans for Memorial Day?
Not really. Just kind of relaxing and, no work over the weekend.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, most certainly.
So,
All right. Well, I'm probably gonna end the stream. We've been going for almost 2 hours, so I'm probably gonna just end it right here.
all right. Well, good talking, brother.
You too. Oh wait, we have one other person, so I'll talk to this other person. You can head out if you want, but I'll talk to this other person since the other person just joined. How's it going, Howdy?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes. How's it going?
Pretty good. How are
It's the
you
first time
guys?
you've been on my channel.
Actually, I think I was on yours before, but there was a
Okay.
lot going on.
All right. Well, what questions do you have?
I don't know. Your stream sort of threw itself on my feed, and then I clicked on it and it said join, and I joined, and I guess the topic is about Mary. What's going on with
Yes.
Mary?
And ask me anything about Mary.
Well, who is Mary? What's the deal?
Well, Mary is the mother of God, who was chosen by God or predestined by God before the foundation of the world to ultimately bear the Messiah, and who was graced in a manner to where she was most excellently prepared to fulfill such a task.
Wow, that's quite a lot.
Yeah.
I was thinking most of that. I guess most Christians are going to find all that objectionable. I guess although there's maybe some ambiguity with like what's meant by Mother of God,
Yeah.
and then the other is the Marian dogmas that about Assumption and
Oh, Immaculate
Immaculate
Conception.
Conception. Yeah.
Yeah. People do find it objectionable. People do find it objectionable. Um, but again, one of the things that St. Augustine and St. Thomas Aquinas write about is that in the virtue of charity, I mean, obviously they both view charity as the form of the virtues, but in charity, there's two different subjects. There's charity that is allotted to a person based on that person's, you know, end, or based on the or charity that's allotted to a person equally based on the fact that they're created in the image of God. And then there's charity that is another form of charity which is allotted to a person based on their relationship to us. And that charity, that second charity, is what makes a man rational. So, for example, our parents deserve an extra amount of love based on their relationship to us. Our teachers, other authority figures are owed a level of charity or respect based on their relationship to us. And so when it comes to Mary, the Mother of God, she is owed a level of respect, or an extra level of respect based on the excellence she achieved or the excellence she was granted as Christ's mother in that respect. So when you see people say, "Well, why is there such a emphasis on Mary?" That's mainly the reason why. But in regards to the Marian doctrines, like the Immaculate Conception, this is one of the things that Father Reginald Garrigou-Lagrange writes about. Is he writes about how he builds on the idea of sufficient grace, which sufficient grace is basically the idea that God is not going to give a person a task if he doesn't give that person the proper means to fulfill that task. So, like for example, when St. Paul is on his hands and knees and he says, uh, I haven't been graced. You haven't, you have to give me more grace. And God says, what, you think I didn't, you think my grace isn't sufficient for you? I mean, the grace I give you is sufficient. And so in regards to, and you see that with, many of the prophets in the Old Testament, like Amos, the prophet Amos says, I was no prophet until God called me to be a prophet. So basically saying that God, prepared him and endowed him to become a prophet. You see that with Isaiah, where with Isaiah you see God talks to Isaiah and he says, "Who shall I send?" And then Isaiah says, "Here I am, Lord." God saying, "Who shall I send?" is almost, supposed to be showing God preparing Isaiah or gracing Isaiah and making him prepared for the mission that he had prepared for him. And you could make that argument about the writers of Scripture as well. We as Christians trust Scripture to be inerrant, even though the men who wrote Scripture were not in and of themselves perfect. because we trust that God, when He gave them the task of writing the scriptures, gave them everything that they need and made them well equipped to write the scriptures. And so, what Father Garrigou Lagrange says about Mary is he says that when Mary had her fiat, when she says, I am the handmaiden of the Lord, let it be done to me according to the counsel of your will. Essentially, two things are going on. Number one, Mary is essentially being used as a secondary cause to enact the events that are going to lead to the salvation of the entire world. And B, Mary, by her excellence as Mother of the Savior, is essentially congruously meriting the events that would lead to the cross that would ultimately be the source and summit of man's salvation. And Father Garrigou Lagrange says on both of these accounts, Mary would not have been well equipped to do either of these things if there were any stain of sin on her conscience. So, if Mary had committed even one sin, her intellect would have been distorted and she wouldn't have been able to, and both of the two requisites I mentioned could not have been true. If, like some have suggested, she never committed any personal sins, but she was conceived with the wounded nature of Adam, then then the two requisites would still be unable to apply in that respect. And so, because of that, Father Garrigou Lagrange basically supposes that Mary must have been conceived without any sort of original sin on her conscience. Otherwise, she would not have been well equipped to consent to the salvation of all of mankind. And then on the second front, on the bodily assumption of Mary, I do have a video coming out about that. For a lot of Catholics, that is like the most challenging Marian dogma to answer because, on the one hand, I mean, you get implicit references to the assumption in the Psalms and in Revelation, and, I guess you could argue the Song of Songs, but a lot of people struggle with it because they say, well, Mary is never mentioned by name. And even a lot of the church fathers don't really talk about it. On the first objection, in regards to scripture, as I've said many times before, St. Robert Bellarmine comments on this. Unwritten tradition can be accepted as an element of faith if it completes a question in scripture that is unanswered. So St. Robert basically makes the argument that because scripture is pedagogical, it's ordered towards the nature of man and the nature of the authors that wrote the text. Because of that, scripture is sufficient in materially providing all manner of doctrine, but not everything is explicit because it's only written according to the nature and events of the time. So, for example, the Bible doesn't tell you if somebody baptizes you and then it turns out that person doesn't secretly believe. It doesn't tell you explicitly whether you should get rebaptized or not. However, the principle of whether that would be good or not is still something we can derive from the principles of scripture materially. It's kind of like with the U.S. Constitution. There are laws in America that are enforced that are not explicitly in the Constitution, and yet we still, can follow those rules because because they don't contradict and are consistent with the principles that are laid out in the Constitution. And what St. Robert says is because Scripture is pedagogical and because certain things aren't explicitly mentioned, whenever there's a question or an extension of a principle in Scripture, unwritten tradition can apply to complete that that manner. Like, for example, when it comes to the age of baptism, many people will say you can't baptize infants because there's no explicit references to it in the scriptures. Um, Talk to you soon, Maddie. But yeah, like people will say that's not explicitly in the scriptures and therefore it can't be accepted. Um, Saint Robert would say, if you read the scriptures explicitly, there's no answer as to when a person should be baptized at all, and therefore to answer that question, you would need unwritten tradition. And so, in regards to Mary's bodily assumption, because the book of Genesis says that there was enmity between Mary and the serpent. The argument is the full extent of that, or the full realization of that principle, is realized in the unwritten tradition of the bodily assumption, which is implicitly in the scriptures, but not explicitly in the scriptures. But in regards to the second objection that Protestants will raise about, like for example, say, oh, why are church fathers silent about it? Saint Vincent of Lerins comes up with what he calls the Vincentian canon, which is essentially this model he comes up for how we judge certain beliefs of the church fathers. And so, um, uh, in regards to that, here, give me 1 second. In regards to the Vincentian canon, he basically lays out three requisites: antiquity, consent, and universality. So basically, he says there has to be some bearing in the church from ancient times regarding that practice. It has to be have been consented by the authorities of the church at that time. Like, it can't be something like, Gnosticism, or some of the practices that the Judaizers were providing, or it can't be like Arianism, where it's just floating around in the church, but the authorities of the church explicitly condemn it at the time. It can't be like that. And then finally, at some point, not instantly, but at some point, um, the third requisite is Saint Vincent says that the doctrine has to have become universal at some point. In regards to give me 1 second. In regards to the bodily assumption was something that did have its roots in antiquity. We know that Stephen Schumacher writes about this, how from the very first early in the 2nd century and there on, you had what were known as Marian cults, where they would give out certain writings, and many of those writings talked about the end of Mary's life, and a lot of that pertained to her bodily assumption. Now, some Protestants will try to say that those were Gnostic writings. Schumacher says that that's unlikely because even though they are somewhat esoteric, he says that a lot of those texts have to do with the dignity of the body, which obviously are not, isn't consistent with what the Gnostics believed or taught. But we know that was never condemned by the early church, and there was some presence of it in the early church, but it became universal eventually. Like, if you asked 1,000 Christians 10 years before before Martin Luther put the 95 Thesis on the door, if you asked them, do you think that that Mary was bodily assumed at the end of your life? Very likely, most, if not all, of those 1,000 Christians would have said yes, she was. So that's another sign that the bodily assumption did become universal at some point in time. And even Venerable Pope Pius XII, before he dogmatized it in his encyclical letters, said that sent a letter out to the Catholic faithful that many people in the church had to answer, saying, "Do you have a problem, or would you take issue with this being dogmatized?" And unanimously, the answer was no. So I would say under that model, the bodily assumption completely meets the standard of St. Vincent's canon. Does that answer your question?
Oh man, it was so long ago. It's difficult for me to
I know
remember
I
what
tend to be a little long-winded.
Yeah, I might be unable to answer your question because I'm unable to recall my own.
Well, you had asked originally about Mary, and you said, "Who is Mary?" And I gave you an answer, and you said, "Well, some people might disagree with that because you said some people might disagree with that because um, you know you said some people might disagree with that, especially on the doctrines." And then I kind of explained the doctrines a little bit.
Yeah, it is. It is difficult for me though. Um, the the mode of long speeches makes it. I don't know. Like sometimes it's just hard for me to keep up or hold everything in my mind. It seems as though, I mean, I guess I would estimate like at least 100 or maybe like 150 assertions, which is just almost about 150 too many for myself.
Well, I apologize if that's the case.
Well, it's a the fault is mine. I mean, I would what I would give to be able to track and follow everything that you said. Um, I suppose I guess I do have sort of a question. Like maybe it's something like I have a lack of clarity, or maybe it's something like maybe like it's hard for me to like understand or like make out what's being said at times. You know, of the stuff about Mary. One is question I always thought was somewhat interesting is the ones that we mentioned, although it might be better to, you know, do one at a time. I suppose the most interesting to me at this time is like the Mary is the mother of God.
Yeah.
So the thing about language, especially, well, I should say like abstract informal languages like English, um, is that words can mean like all sorts of things, you know. So it's like just take for instance, okay, Mary is like that could mean dozens of things. I mean, it could be something like predication or identification or definition or description or attribution or, you know, uh, something like a Phrygian sense. or
I get what you're
lots of things
saying.
that it could be.
I
So I
know.
guess my
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
I guess the first question is, okay, what sense of is being used when saying something like that?
Yeah, I know St. Thomas, we talked about this a little bit earlier too. Yeah, St. Thomas discusses the communication of idioms, which is basically the idea that because Christ's one divine person, man, and but he's fully divine, fully man. Um, Certain things about Christ's human nature, certain things about Christ's human nature can be said, in regards to his divine nature, as long as you make that quantification. But certain things about or certain qualities um, of his human nature cannot be attributed to his divine nature. So, for example, can you say that God died? Well, St. Thomas would say, yes, you can say that God died because of the perfection of of the presence of the divine nature in the human person, or in Christ, or because of the fullness of Christ's humanity and his divinity. You can fully say, yes, God died, because Christ's humanity and his divinity existed perfectly and consubstantially together. And so he says, yes, you can say that. Um, can you say that? Can you say that? I'm trying to think of another example that to the opposite. Can you say that the man Christ was omnipotent? Well, no, you can't say that because then that creates theological issues. Since Christ's human nature existed in time, but when it comes to attributing certain qualities of Christ's divinity to his humanity, you can do that because Christ's divinity was fully present in his humanity. Um, and therefore, it's not wrong to say Mary is the mother of God or God died on the cross, so long as you quantify that and make a right distinction about that. Um, does that make sense?
Yeah, somewhat. Well, maybe I hesitate to say familiar, but I've heard things like this said. Um, Still, I guess the first question to I'm still on what we mean by is when saying something like this.
Well, you mean in regards to is she the mother of God?
Well, you say something like, Mary is, and um, it's just somewhat ambiguous to me, like what that means.
Well, I would say when we say Mary is the mother of God, we're attributing a specific title or a specific office to her.
So when you say title, um, well, it's a bit confusing because attribution is like when you give an attribute and then you said, well, it's a title. And so, like,
Well, it's a
is
title
it, are you,
based on an attribution. It's a name that's given off of an attribution. Kind of like how in the book of Genesis, when God gives Adam the ability to name certain creatures and certain objects, ultimately those names are ultimately based on the attributes that Adam sees and determines based on what he sees about these animals. At the same time, you know, at the same time, the names are still being given to describe those attributions.
Maybe one example to illustrate my confusion is um, around the uh, time of the Babylonian Syrian stuff. Um, they gave pretty fanciful titles. I mean, we still do this today, but what immediately comes to my mind is what they would say, Lord, they would say Darius, King of the universe and the four winds and as some sort of, I guess title of reverence or something. Or today maybe we'll say something like, we'll say someone is, let's say there's like a mascot on a sports team, and the name of the sports mascot is Team Spirit, and then there's some guy named Bob who his job is to be the mascot Team Spirit, and you could say Bob is Team Spirit, where it's something like where the is somehow nominal, if you understand what I mean by
Yeah,
that.
I mean, you could do that. I mean, hypothetically, you could say Bob is Team Spirit, but if you had a team called Team Spirit, and then you had a guy who was a 50-year-old man, I think, and he came out as a mascot at a game, going by the title Team Spirit, I think a lot of people, their first thought would be, well, this is a little bit ironic. Why is Bob 58 years old and he is like, dressed as Team Spirit? That doesn't make a lot of sense. It would be like if there was a team called the Wildcats, and then you had a mascot that came out dressed as a wolf. People would say that's a little bit ironic. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So yeah, I mean, you could, realistically just come up with random nominal titles. But when we say Mary is the mother of God, when we give her that title, that is ultimately a title that we give her based on the attributes and nature that are associated with her.
Okay. So to continue, we're saying something like Mary is by title or Mother of God honorifically is how we're
Well, we would
starting.
say she's mother of God by nature, and that title, Theotokos, or Mother of God, which was confirmed at the Council of Ephesus, is a title that identifies that. It's a title that ultimately pronounces that nature in a manner that accurately portrays something to the church. Like, for example, when if we say when you give a king certain titles, like when you say the most glorious king smells a lot the second, the most glorious commander and leader of our nation, or some title like that. Yeah, that's a title that's given, but that's not just some nominalistic random title. Ultimately, that's a title that's supposed to, indicate or portray something or pronounce something about the role and office that he possesses. And so when we say Mary is the mother of God, that office or that title, I think, pronounces something about her nature.
Yeah, I guess we can talk about what we mean by nature, but perhaps before that.
And I do got to get off pretty soon, but I can talk a
Oh,
little bit
okay.
longer.
Well, I guess my first inclination is to think about, well, titles by nature, right?
Hmm.
Whenever people like use titles, usually, they're purposeful. Like um, furnish some means of communication. So even if like you can say Trump is president, or or Jeff is captain, or etc. I'm not sure what it would mean to say someone has a title by nature, I suppose.
Well, it's a title that is derived, that is associated with the person's nature. So, for example, you know, at the Council of Ephesus, the issue was people were popping up starting to use the title Mother of God or Theotokos, God bearer, which they had derived. But obviously, they didn't just make it up one day. It wasn't like they just said, oh, yeah, Mary doesn't possess any sort of qualities or any sort of nature that would lead us to do this. We're just randomly calling her this. No, obviously, the title Mother of God pertained to her nature, and that's why people started to derive it. Um, but but it was obviously still a new title that was being derived to identify those purposes, and the whole thing was, Nestorius was saying, no, that's not true. Stop using that title. And the idea of Ephesus is saying, well, yes, you can't really deny that title, even though this title is something that's been developed over time. Denying this title denies certain truths about the faith because this specific title aligns with the nature that she possesses.
Would you say it's something like maybe I can come up with a more a more a an example with more similitude? Let's say I say something like necessity is the mother of invention, or maybe it would be better if I say you say something like let's say there's this woman Margaret, and Margaret was a genius, and she had 5 or 6 inventions that were very important technological advancements. And then because of her success and her work, and we give her a title that's sort of suited to what she's done, and we say Margaret, mother of invention. Are you saying that are you saying like it's in the same way as that, or something else?
Well, what I'm saying is it would have to relate to something that is true and intrinsic um, uh, to the nature of the person. So if you're saying Margaret is the mother of inventions in general, well, I mean, clearly she isn't the mother of inventions in general. Maybe you could say that, that's a hyperbolous title, and again, that relates to hyperbole. And I think in that instance, you could say the nature, that principle still applies, although you would have to quantify that in a hyperbolous manner. But if you're trying to say, well, she's literally the mother of this invention, again, I would say that also falls under hyperbole because you can't birth a nature or an invention literally, but you could say from a hyperbolic standpoint, sure, yeah, she is the mother of this invention in the sense that she created it. So in that manner, it's not a problem. I think it's a little different from what we're talking about with Mary, because with Mary literally gave birth to a boy child, and we're trying to derive when she gave birth to that boy child, what title of Mary best encompasses the reality of who she gave birth to. And in that manner, it's we would say, Mother of God is most befitting because the fullness of Christ's deity existed within him, even in his human nature consubstantially. But obviously it's not wrong to say Margaret is the inventor of this, the mother of this invention, but you do have to make that. I do think you do have to make that distinction. But I can take one more question, and then I am going to have to head out.
All right, thanks. I guess I can see persons being mothers of persons, but
Well, that was part of the
I,
thing too, and I'll let you finish your question. But I did want to say that was part of the controversy too. Was Saint Eusebius kind of mocked Nestorius, and he said, "Well, who's ever heard of a woman giving birth to a nature?" And Nestorius didn't really like that joke, and he ended up sending people to Saint Eusebius's house to beat him up for that. But sorry, go ahead.
yeah, that's what I was thinking. It seems as though it's somehow a category error. Like you couldn't give birth to a nature, and so she's the mother of Jesus Christ, and she wouldn't be giving birth to humanity as such or divinity as such.
Right, exactly. Right. It's like
So
right.
I guess my question is, I guess that wasn't a question. So if that's not the case, she's the mother of Jesus Christ, and then, well, I guess a different question is, you said, well, she's not the mother of inventions in general, and I would say, well, is she the mother of like divine persons in general, or
Well, well, no, we would say she's not the mother of all three persons. That's one of the things that St. Thomas says about the communication of idioms is you do have to quantify when you are speaking on any matter. The distinction. You do have to quantify specific distinctions when you're talking about idioms about Christ's nature. So, for example, if you say God died on the cross, that's not bad as long as you quantify that the person Jesus Christ, who is both human and divine, suffered, and died on the cross. Um, that's totally that's the you do have to make that quantification. But like if you were to say God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit died, well, that would be obviously wildly heretical. So you can say God died, but you do have to make that distinction. And so when it comes to, um, Jesus Christ, the man, the teaching we believe is that the person, the second person of the Trinity, Christ, or the Son, took on human flesh, and so in that manner we say that, and we say that when he took on flesh, his divinity was fully consubstantial with his divine nature, but we still make the distinction that this was the person of Christ who was the Son, and so you do have to make a distinction that Mary is not mother of all three persons of the Trinity, because the person Jesus Christ was the second person of the Trinity, assuming flesh. It wasn't. If you say she's the mother of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, then you can risk falling into oneness or modalism, where you say things like the Son is the Father, or the Father is the Son, or the Spirit is the Son, or the Son is his own Father. You do have to make that quantification or that distinction, to be in line with right doctrine and avoid error.
yeah, well, maybe we can talk about it again another time.
Yeah.
But as it stands, it does seem we were talking about what is the most accurate and fitting title or description of Mary, and from what we've discussed, it seems like I would be drawn towards saying, well, she's the mother of Jesus. That would be like the most accurate, because to get to the other one, you have to sort of make a few. I don't know. It's just more. I guess my
I mean,
question.
I think the reason it became more emphasized after Ephesus was because at Ephesus, the title, the title was determined to pronounce something about Christ's character and say like this is who Christ is, and therefore, when we say she's the mother of God and not just the mother of Christ, that emphasizes something about the character and person of who Christ is, as opposed to saying, well, only his nature was possessed in his humanity, or only his nature was a separate person from, or his nature creates distinctions in the person of who he is, when obviously it doesn't.
All right. Well, it was good talking to you.
You too.
And,
Thank you for
I'll see you.
joining.
Yeah, no problem. See you.
Talk to you soon. And thank you guys for joining. Make sure to hit that likes button and subscribe. I'm going to try and do these monthly videos. Next month, I'll do one on the Incarnation. All right. Talk